Hi there guys, it's Aaron from All Out Gaming here today to give you my gameplay impressions of Resident Evil Requiem and Pragmata, two high-profile Capcom games that are coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 very soon. I got to play them and I want to give you my thoughts. So just a wise word before we get into it, I'm going to be talking about Resident Evil Requiem first in docked mode, but if you want to jump to my preview impressions and gameplay thoughts of Pragmata in handheld mode on Nintendo Switch 2, then you can jump to the following timestamp. Okay, all good? Let's dive into it. So Resident Evil Requiem, I've previewed it twice now on the channel. It wouldn't be adverse to say that this is pretty much my most anticipated game of 2026. That might seem a little bit crazy considering that it's out so soon, but I was super curious, having already been able to play it on PlayStation and PC at recent preview events, how it would run on Nintendo Switch 2, which is a console I'm genuinely curious about. We've got so many AAA high-budget ports coming now. We've just had Dynasty Warriors Origins. We've most recently just had Final Fantasy Remake Integrate, and all those games are running sweet as a nut. But those two games were ports. They came out on previous consoles first, where the interesting thing about Resident Evil Requiem is that it's coming day and date alongside Xbox, PC, and PlayStation to Nintendo Switch 2. Do I want to play it there? Well, I have to say, after getting to play the initial Grace demo for roughly about 30 minutes in docked mode, I came away really impressed with what Capcom has been able to achieve with the RE engine through Resident Evil Requiem. Resident Evil Requiem, of course, isn't the only Resident Evil game arriving on the console late February. It's also coming alongside Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, two great horror games I will most happily replay again on Nintendo system, having gotten to play Requiem now. Is it running at 60 FPS in docked mode? Absolutely not. You're not going to get buttery smooth 60 FPS at 1080p resolution in docked on Nintendo Switch 2. However, you're also not being locked to 30 FPS. This is a section of the game that is locked down to mainly corridors, which the bulk of Resident Evil Requiem seems to be in. It takes place in Rhodes Hill medical care facility. If you haven't already watched my original preview for the 3 hours of hands-on time I recently got to play during this section, you can watch that also on the channel. But for now, got to play the 30-minute opening where you get to play as Grace. You're skulking around. I got to play in first-person mode as well as third-person, and I would say it's sort of managing to accomplish a 40 FPS variable frame rate in docked mode on Nintendo Switch 2. Whether or not the same can be true for handheld mode, which I will admit is what I'm most curious to see, but for now it's running pretty smooth, just a little bit under the frame rate of what will be the modern versions, the most modern versions, but equally as impressive is just the fidelity of the thing. It looks like a treat with impressive shadows and lighting effects. A large portion of this demo features Grace skulking around the hospital facility with a lighter in her hand, and the flickering of the lighter is doing some pretty impressive lighting work on the Nintendo Switch 2. The one drawback of Resident Evil Requiem that I got to see on that big screen right now is there is some slight artifacting. Most obviously in Grace's hair, which is obviously, you know, individual strands. The RE engine is already a great looking engine, but I will say if you are looking really closely at Grace's hair, you'll notice some artifacting and it doesn't look as detailed or smooth as what I recently got to play on PlayStation. While the RE engine is clearly doing a lot of impressive work on both Resident Evil Requiem in both docked and handheld mode, you're going to be wanting to switch between both for different reasons. So I hope you've enjoyed the sort of gameplay that's been running on screen right now. I really enjoyed and was impressed by what I saw. Resident Evil Requiem, it's a looker on Switch 2. Perhaps the more interesting game that not a lot of people have seen yet is Pragmata, which is this sci-fi driven third-person shooter hack-em-up game from Capcom that everybody originally thought might have been a high-budget Mega Man spin-off. Sadly, it's not that. The demo I got to play is basically, I believe it's called the Sketchbook demo, which is what was recently released for PC, but this is the first time anyone, at least to my knowledge, has been able to see this game running on Nintendo Switch 2 in handheld mode. And what do you know? This is a full-fat third-person shooter where you're battling robots, you're dodging away, you're using the hacking skills of the little robot android girl you've got on your back, and it all flows pretty smoothly. The action is obviously faster paced than Resident Evil Requiem, so you will notice a bit of artifacting and a bit of slowdown in the frame rate whenever the action gets too deep. There was a point, obviously, where I had 3 or 4 enemies on screen, the action pauses, you complete the hack using the directional buttons, enter it, and it just feels really good to play in the hands. This isn't shaping up to be a lesser version in any way. Although the frame rate might be capped and it's not achieving 60 FPS, obviously there's always going to be some concessions with Nintendo Switch 2. I think that similar to Resident Evil, Pragmata looks and plays really well on Nintendo Switch 2 in handheld mode. And obviously, having only been able to experience it in handheld mode myself, once that game is docked, who knows, you might even get 4K output. Let's see what Capcom is able to pull out of this thing. This is a game set in a moon base primarily, where the action is condensed and locked down to basically a single location. But having said that, the demo ends with a pretty climactic, bombastic boss fight, so the action can get really chaotic in there, but the Nintendo Switch 2 seem to be handling it fine. Sure, it might be a lot of the texture detail you might be losing, it might look a little bit blurry. I tried to look in the menus and there wasn't the ability to swap between performance and fidelity mode, at least whilst playing in handheld. So again, I think Capcom are trying to go for that 40 FPS variable sort of frame rate, which doesn't quite look as good as 60, but it does feel a lot smoother than traditional 30 FPS. So Pragmata came away really impressed with what I got to play on Nintendo Switch 2. So there you have it, guys, in terms of my very chaotic, rambly preview thoughts of the gameplay I got to experience of Resident Evil Requiem on Switch 2 and Pragmata. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, be sure to leave it a like. And then don't forget to subscribe to the All Out Gaming YouTube channel to stay up to date with even more videos like this. There's lots of exciting things still to come. But anyway, guys, until next time, I'll see you in the next one.